Let me ask you about Cuba. You obviously are very much against this and have made that known. You were the first person out to say the president is wrong in doing this. You've opposed it for a long, long time. But can you and the other Republicans who oppose this, can you stop this from happening, and how would you do that?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand why I oppose it. I am not opposed to changes in Cuba policy. I think we constantly need to examine our foreign policy. I'm opposed to changes like this that have no chance of leading to the result that we want, which is more freedom and more liberty for the Cuban people. This change is entirely predicated upon the false notion that engagement alone automatically leads to freedom. And I think we have evidence that that's not the case. Look at Vietnam and look at China, countries that we have engaged. They are no more politically free today than they were when that engagement started. Now, our job is twofold. One, it's important to have oversight over how these changes are made. There is existing law that has codified the U.S. embargo, and whatever regulations are now written to implement the president's new policy have to live up to that law. And beyond it, I think we need to examine, as the Cuban government doesn't make any changes to the human rights record, they're going to arrest people today. They arrested people yesterday. They're going to continue to crack down on opposition in the island. We need to hold this administration accountable for these policy changes. And if in fact the Cubans do nothing reciprocal to live up to or to open up political space, constantly challenge and re-examine these policy changes the president's made.
Rand Paul, who, like you, is considering whether to run for the Republican nomination for president in 2016, is one of the few Republicans who came out in support of what the president did. He said he thought it was a pretty good idea. What was your reaction to that?
Well, obviously I disagree, and he has the right to become a supporter of President Obama's foreign policy, but I think it's premised on the same false notion that engagement alone leads to freedom. It doesn't. We have engagement with Vietnam and China, and while their economies have grown, their political freedoms have not. Look what China is today, 30 years after that engagement. China steals our military and commercial secrets, obviously actively conducts cyber operations against the United States, and internally their people have no religious, no freedoms, no freedom of speech, no unfettered access to the internet.
Let me just ask you this question then, Senator. Do you think it would be a good idea for us to break relations with China?
Well, first of all, comparing China to Cuba is not really a comparable analogy, because China is the second largest economy in the world. They have the third largest nuclear arsenal on the planet. They are the most populous nation on the planet. So obviously, from a geopolitical perspective, our approach to China by necessity has to be different from a small impoverished island of 13 million people. When it comes to Cuba, a neighbor of ours, our foreign policy actually has a very realistic opportunity of helping further the cause of freedom and liberty on the island. And in fact, what Cuba offers us that China and Vietnam did not is the opportunity to engage with a real and vibrant civil society on the island. And they were not consulted. They were completely ignored and left out of this equation, and they rightfully feel betrayed.
All right. Well, Senator, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.